learn about input and output and variables in Java programming. Okay, so there are many variables here, as you guys can see. Int, or people just call it integer, for string, float, double, and char. So later we will talk about it. Okay, so just let's get started. Make sure you guys have opened up your text editor. Okay, the first thing that we are going to learn is for the input and output. So to do an output in Java programming, we can use system.out.println. So the syntax for outputting a text, we can use a system.out.println, and we give a brackets or parentheses here. And don't forget to give a semicolon. Okay, so here is the content that we are going to output it. For example, we want to output a text that is, hi, my name is Andy. Okay, so to outputting a text or variables, we can just use a syntax like this. To run the program, we can type F11. Okay, so just type it F11, and as you guys can see that the program is running and it says, hi, my name is Andy. So we have successfully created a text, hi, my name is Andy, and output to the program. Okay, so for the next thing, we will be learning about input or scan. But before that, we have to learn about variables first. Maybe we start from the first, that is integer. Okay, so to create a variable, we need to give a data types for our variables. So in the mathematics, if you want to create a new variables, we can just say it like the name of the variable, maybe for example is x, and we give the value of 5. In the mathematics, it is as simple as this. Okay, but in the programming, if we want to create a new variables, we have to specify the data types of the variables. If you want to create a variable of a number, then we have to specify the data types of integer. Okay, maybe we can say the data types here, integer, and don't forget to end it with semicolon. So if you want to create a new variable, this is the syntax, the data types, the name of the variables, and the value of it. Okay, so we have successfully created our first new variable. So maybe we can print it. We can just use system.out.println to output the value. And now in the inside of parentheses, we fill it with our name of variables. So it is just x. Okay, now we run the program F11. Now it will be printed in our program 5. So it's just like our value in our variables. Okay, for the next thing that we have to learn is for the scan. Okay, so if you want to take an input from the user and output it to the computer, we can use the scanner. Okay, so just type scanner, and don't forget to import the scanner java.util. Just click it, and it will be automatically imported by the Java. Okay, so scanner and the name of the variable, maybe for example we use scan. Now to create an object of the scanner, we have to type new scanner. Okay, and don't forget to type system.in. Okay, now this is the syntax to create an object of the scanner, and we can use it for scanning or inputting a number or a variables. Okay, so if you want to scan a thing from the user, we have to create a variable first to make a temporary value there. Okay, so if you want to user input a number, we have to create a variable with a integer data type. Okay, so maybe integer a input. Okay, now use the scan here, right here, to give the value into the variables. So we can just type like input equals to scan dot next in. If you want to scan a integer, then we can use scan dot next integer. So the user will input a value in our program, and the value will be given to the input variables. So now if we want to print our variables input, we can just type south and control space. It will automatically shortcut for us. And now we use the variable input to print the value. So if you run the program will stop until the user give a value. Now if we give a value 200, now it will be printed in our console 200. Okay, for the scan and output, it's just like that. For nesting, we want to learn about the other variables or the other data types. We can use string to give text, so we can just type string text. Maybe it equals to hi. Let's hit jump on. And now if we want to print the value, we can use salt text. As you guys can see, the program stopped first because we use the scanner. So maybe we can give an input. Maybe it's like 1000. Okay, now 1000 is printed in our console, and so is hi lets it jump on. Now, if you want to create a variables with the value of decimal number, we can use float for the data type. Maybe for the variable name is decimal number. Maybe it equals to 1. Now, if you want to print it, we can use salt again, the decimal number. But as you guys can see, there is a red underline here, and it says an error. So as you guys can see that type mismatch cannot convert from double to float. So we have to fix the error. Just click the add cast to float here. Okay, so the float for the decimal number, we have to typecast into double to the float data types. Okay, if you run the program, now the program stopped to give us a chance to input a value. Maybe we can type 500 and it will be printed in our console. Okay, and for the double data types, it's the same as the float. So it's just for decimal number, but the double data types is more precise than the float. Okay, maybe it's the double decimal number. Maybe it equals to 5.79. And as you guys can see that we don't need to typecast like float this. And as you guys can see, we don't need to typecast like the float because the decimal number is basically a double by default. So to print, we can use this south to print. Maybe it's like a double decimal number. And here we're going to add our double decimal number. Just type a plus our variable double decimal number. Okay, run the program, and we will give an input, for example 2000, and it will be printed in our console as well. Okay, and for the last data type that we have to learn is the char. Okay, so the char is basically same as like string, but string is for text. If we want our variable have a value of text, so there are many characters like this, we can use a string. But if you want to create a value of one character only, we can use a char data type like this. Maybe for example letter equals to a. Okay, so don't forget, if you want to just only create a single character, we can use a single quote. But if you want to create a long text like this, there are many characters, we have to create a double quote. Okay, so to print the letter, we can use south the letter. Okay, and to run the program, and it's all printed in our console. Okay, so actually you guys can research more about variables and input or output. So maybe like a byte data types, okay, and array list and many more. So you guys have to research it. So okay guys, it's the end of our course. Hopefully it makes you understand about the variables and more about Java programming. Okay, thank you.
Hello everyone. Today we are going to learn basic Java programming. For this course, we're going to use Eclipse IDE. For starters, we're going to create a new project. We can do that by clicking here, File, New, and we choose Java project. Then right here, we can choose whatever name we want for our project. I'm going to name it Java. And I'm going to hit Finish. And here to your left, in the Package Explorer, we can see all our projects. And we can see the project we just created, which is Java. And inside this project, we're going to create a new class. You can do that by hovering to the Java project right here, right click, and choose New Class. Here we're going to type in the name of the class. I'm going to name it Main Class. And we want to check this box right here and hit Finish. So here I'm going to type New Main Class, which is going to call the constructor right here. And inside this constructor, we are going to write all of our code. So first off, how do we show something on our screen? We can do that by typing system.out.println. And then, inside it, we can type whatever we want to show on our screen. For example, I'm going to type in hello world. After that, I'm going to hit F11, or we can just use this button right here to compile. And there it is, hello world. Now let's try again. I'm going to copy this line of code here and paste it. And this time I'm going to type in, this is my first program. And if we compile it again, it's going to show on the screen, hello world, and this is my first program. So now I'm going to introduce you to comments. Comments are like annotation. They're used for us programmers to make it easier for us to understand our code. So how do we make comments? We make comments by using double slash. Then here is our comment. So why is comment practical? Because comment will not be compiled to our program. So for example, if we comment this line right here and we hit compile, notice how the this is my first program does not show, because that line is a comment. So if we erase that and we hit compile again, this time it will show. So now I'm going to introduce you to something called variables. Variables are used for storing values. So in Java, we have to specify what kind of value we want to store, which brings us to data types. There are many different types of data types in Java. We're going to start off very simple. I'm going to introduce you to integer, double, and string. Integers are used for storing numbers without decimal points. Double are used for numbers without with decimal points. And string, they are used to store words. So how do we create a variable? We start with the data type. I'm gonna try to create an integer here, so I'm gonna type integer followed by the name of our variable. I'm gonna call it my number. So now we can fill this variable with whatever value you want to store, as long as it is a number without decimal points. If we try to fill this variable with, let's say 10.4, it's gonna show an error. Let's try it. My number equals 10.4. So right here, it's gonna show a red line, which means an error, because my number is a integer, and integers are not made for storing numbers with decimal points. That's what doubles are for. Let's try creating a double. Double my number 2. We're gonna erase this 0.4 right here, and then we're gonna fill my number 2 with 10.4. And this time it doesn't show an error, because that's what doubles are for. Let's try making another one. This time we're gonna make a string. String my word. My word equals hello world. So that's how you declare a variable and how you initialize a variable. So now, how do we show the value of our variable? We can do that by using the same syntax as before, system.out.println, but this time we don't add a quotation mark, and inside it, we type in the name of the variable. I'm gonna type in my number. So when I hit compile, it should show 10. And there it is. I'm gonna copy this, and I'll show my number 2 and my word. And it should show 10, 10.4, and hello world. So what's great about variables is that we can change its value over time. So first off, I'm just gonna comment this, and then I'm gonna erase this. Now, when we show the value of my number here, it should show 10. And then below that, I can change its value. Let's say the value is now 3 instead of 10. And if I show it again, right here, it will be 3. Let's see. So notice how my number first showed 10 and then showed 3. It is because I changed its value right here. We can also perform arithmetic operation using variables. So let's add my number plus my number 2. So it should show 3 plus 10.4, which is 13.4. Speaking of arithmetic operations, there are addition, subtraction, division, multiplication, and remainder. We're gonna try them all. So I'm just gonna copy this line of code here, and we're gonna hit paste, and we're gonna replace this with subtraction, division, multiplication, and remainder. This one line extra, I'm just gonna delete it, and then when we hit compile, it's gonna show the results. So there you have it. We've covered variables, arithmetic operations, and output. That is it for today's lesson. I'll see you in the next one.
Hello everyone, welcome to this class. In this session, we are going to learn basics of programming. This will be the introduction of programming. It's going to contain how to do basic output and input in programming. So before we begin, let's first save the file that we just created. Let's just save it as the introduction, maybe just say it introduction.cpp. Then just click yes if you are like me. So what we're going to learn is the C language today, because the C language is, people say that it's the very most easy to learn as the programming language, and it was the mother of all programming language. To create a program, we need to create a main function. So what this main function does is it will be the first thing that our program will execute it or start before the rest. So the first thing we need to is create the main function for the program. To create it, we just need to say int main and give this, just like this. This is called the main function. Then, because we want to do basic output and input, we can use a library. The library is called stdio.h. The h here is represent as header, and the stdio here mean std is standard, the io means input, and the o is output. So this library is a code that already written by someone else, so it's simplified on how we can do a simple input and output in our C program. So we must use this before we can do the input and output. To use it, we need to include it. We can write a code like this to say we want to include this library. We just need to put hashtag include, then give the arrow and just say stdio.h. This code here means we want to include this library. And now we can use it. First, let's start with output. Let's just say we want to print or show a text says hello world in our program. What we need to do is simple. You can say that our program is like a printer. That means we want to print something to show it. Therefore, what we need to do is just says printf. The f means format, and we give the format. Let's just say, because we want to print a hello world as a text on our program, then we just say hello world. To test our program, we can use the F11 key. Just press it and it will show your program. It will say hello world, and it says the program exit after how many seconds, and it returns with value 0. What this means is when our program is work properly, it will give a return value of 0. This is true on every single language in programming. Then we can just press any key to close it. Then that is the very basic output in programming. Then let's go with input. As I said, you just can say our program is like a printer. So when you want to give something to a printer, that means you want to scan it. It's the same as our program here. So we need to scan it. We need to scan, but just with format 2. So scanf. Then we give the format. Let's just say we want to give age of the user. That means we want to store something in our program. That means if you want to store something, you will need variables, just like math. If you want to create variables, let's just say we name the variable is age, but you must and always define the type. So this age, the program doesn't know what type is it. It doesn't know if it's a text or it's a object or it's a boolean. But we want this age is a number. So we give a type an integer. It's short as int. Then we just need to do this. This is a template, so you can just follow it like this. And to print it, because we input an age, you want to show the age too, because if we run our program now, we can see that the stop successfully text here, it's gone. So this program is now stopping because he expect an input from the user. So we can put 10 here, and then it exit. So we want to show that we successfully input the age. What we're gonna do is we're gonna print it to prove it. So we just need to print f. This is a template too, you can just follow it. Then we just need to do it like this. Then after we run the program, we type, maybe because now I'm 20, let's just type 20, and it works. Any question? If you want to just raise your hand. Okay, if there's none, that is the very simple basic input and output. Well, you can analog, you can just analogy it like throwing a ball. The input is how much force you give to a ball, and the output is how far or the distance the ball went. That's it for today. Thank you for joining our class. Have a good day.
Hello everyone, my name is Muhammad Zainul Hasan Basri, MZ91. Now we will learn about Linux operating system and basic command line. First, we will try to use Linux operating system with Ubuntu distro. Linux is an operating system which you can download for free in internet. Next, we will learn basic command line using the terminal. So first time, we can enter the command ls, then press enter. ls is a command to show this directory content. We also give option to the command, for example, ls space la, l for listing format, and a for show all data. Then the command will show all information about file or directory like file permission, user who created, group, and date created. There are three permissions on the file: read or R, write, W, execute, X, and there are three types for user, group, and other. So first part for user, second part for group, and last for other. User type is the user who created the file. Group type is group that can access the file, and other type is in addition to the previous two types. Then we can also view the content of the file using the cat command. Example, I want to show content of read.me. Then we can use cat space read.me. Then press enter. So the content of read.me will be shown. We can also to change directory using the cd command. Example, I try to move to the documents directory. We can use cd space documents, then press enter. Then if we want back to previous directory, we can use cd space double dot. Then after we press enter, we will be in the previous directory. For documentation of all command, we can use the man command. For example, I want to read all documentation about ls. I can use man space ls. So all documentation will be shown, and if you want to move, you can use arrow top or bottom like this. Then if you want to exit for documentation, you can press Q. Then we also print a string with use the echo command. For example, I want to show la la la, then use echo la la la. Then after we press enter, la 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 will be shown. We can also combine all command with IO predirection with greater than sign for output and less than sign for input. For example, we want to make a new file with a word la la la, so we can use echo la 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 greater than sign file.txt. Then la 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 will save to a new file with name file.txt. And if we want to open the content, we can use cat command. So far, any question? If not, you can comment at discussion forum and later we will discuss further. So thank you for this listen. Have a good study.
Hello everyone, and today we'll be learning about one of the methods of looping that can be found in Java that you haven't learned of from C, which is called for each. Now, for each executes looping by iterating an iterable. An iterable would be an arrayless array or factor which has components inside of it that can be iterated one by one. Now then, to better understand it, let's look at its actual format. So here in your Eclipse IDE, I have prepared a basic main class which we'll be using for today. So if you were to type in for each and use the autocomplete, you can actually see its basic format, which is as of iterable type, iterable element, and iterable. Now the iterable, as before, is the factor array list or array that you will be iterating. So if its variable name is num, you can type in num here. Next will be the iterable type. This will indicate the data type of the iterable that you're trying to iterate. So if your array list is of array list integer, you type in integer here. Next will be the iterable element, which will be the name that will be iterated onto. So if you were to type in a onto the iterable element, you can use a inside of this for each. So you can print it out, you can use it to calculate something else, and so on. Now to better understand this, let's create an example. A simple example would be using an array. So here I'll try to create an array of integer, and I'll name it num, and I'll fill it in. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Then, as before, the iterable would be the variable name of the array. So I'll type in num here. Then since it's an integer, I'll type in it in the iterable type. Next will be the iterable element, which I will name I. Now then, the for each will iterate each and every component of the array num, starting from the first till the last. So firstly, it will indicate I as 1, and when it reaches its end, it will then change I into 2. To prove this, let's try to print out each component of I for the loop. So if I were to print it out, then execute this, you can see here that it will iterate every component of num. So it prints out 1, then 2, 3, then 4, then 5. Now then, another thing that you have to know from for each is that each component of I here is separated from its iterable. So if I were to change it from I++, then the num would still have 1, but the integer I here would be changed. So it's separated from its actual array. Now then, this is a normal array, so let's try to use an array list. So let me comment this first, and then let me create an array list. of integer, and I'll also call it num, so I don't need to change its iterable. Then let's just create it normally, and then let's add in a few variables inside of it. I'll add in 1, add in 2, and I'll add in 3. Now then, one of the main things you have to remember is this iterable type. Since we're using an array list and its component is its data type is actually a wrapper class of integer, then we need to use the wrapper class of integer too in the data type. So you type in integer, and then it will work as normal. So if I were to execute it, then we'll print out each number starting from the first one that you have added into the array list. Now then, since you have already seen that we can use wrapper class as its data type, one of the notable things that you can use is actually create an array list of an array list. So if you were to put in array list integer, then let me name it num2, create it, name. You can actually use this inside of the for each. So if this becomes num2, there will be an error since its data type is different. You can just type in array list of integer, and there will be no errors. And you can use this array list inside of num2. So for example, if I were to add our num onto num2, and then let me create for each. Now let's just print out each an element. So I dot now system out, I dot wait oh I dot this might be hard to get. I dot get of number one. Then let me copy this to wait.
Hello, my name is Ronaldo. In this tutorial, I want to teach you how loops work in Java. In programming language, loops are used to execute a set of instructions or functions repeatedly when some conditions become true. There are three types of loops in Java: while loop, for loop, and while loop. The first thing we're gonna be looking at is the while loop. The while loop looks like this. You just write the word while, and then you have the open brackets, and then you have curly brackets like this. As you can see, it looks exactly the same as an if statement, except we were in the word while. In while loop, it takes the boolean condition inside these brackets, and if the condition is true, it's going to run the code inside the curly brackets. It's not just going to run it once, it's going to keep running over and over again until this condition in here meets false. So each iteration it's going to check the condition. If it's still true, it's going to run it again. Let's do an example here. Let's make an integer of a, and we are going to set it equal to 0. Now the condition we're gonna make, let's say a is less than 10. So that's our boolean condition. Now we have to change the a variable inside this statement so that not causing infinite looping. So what we're gonna do is we print hello world, and then we add 1 to it. to the a variable. A plus plus is equal to a plus 1. Okay, now we just run our code. As you can see, the hello world is printed 10 times. So that's how while loop works. Now the second loop is for loop. For loop looks like this. You write for the brackets and then do the curly brackets like this. The difference of the for loop is it doesn't actually take a boolean value in here. The for loop needs to take 3 parameters each separated by semicolons. The first parameter is the initial value, or we can initialize it inside the for loop. So we can make an integer called a is equal to 0. The second condition inside the for loop is the condition for the loop to run. For example, in that while loop just now, we said while a is less than is less than 10. We can go ahead and write a is less than 10. Final parameter is in what way we want to increment. So we're gonna say a plus plus. So this is our fully functioning for loop. Let's do an example here. Let's go ahead and just print hello world. Now we run our code. As you can see, hello world is printed 10 times. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This is how for loop works. Okay, next is the while loop. The while loop is slightly different from the while loop. The do while loop basically makes sure the code is run at least once regardless of whether the condition is met or not. So let's go ahead and make an integer called a and equal to 10. And then let's go ahead and set the do while loop. So we can say do with not the word do doesn't need any parameters here. We just have the curly brackets, but then at the end of the curly brackets here, we do need to set up while condition like this. So let's go ahead and print the hello world. And inside the boolean condition, let's say a is less than 10. So if this was a while loop, the condition a is less than 10 would be false because a is equal to 10 and 10 is not less than 10. So if this was a normal while like this, while loop like this, and if we run it to code, as you can see that nothing appears in the console because the condition is false and the code inside the statement is not true. But in do while, as you can see, it appears hello world once in the console. Okay, that's the tutorial about loops in Java. Thank you.
In this video, we will learn about looping in C. So what is looping? Looping, sometimes called as repetition, is a concept that is used when we want to repeat a process several times or until a condition is met. This is one of the most fundamental concepts in programming. No matter which language you choose, you will meet looping. So now, let's try to make our first loop. We'll include residuo.h so we can input and output, and then we will make in main. Before we will make our first loop, let's talk about why we need loop. So if you want to print test, this is what we do, right? And then if we want to do this process 5 times, we can do it like this, right? We can copy and paste and then print it 5 times like this. And then if we run it, we will see that we got 5 tests. So this is what we want. So why do we need loop? If we make it like this, the code is so static, it cannot be changed. So if we want to print test, n number of times according to the input user made. So we will make num and we scan the input from user. We place it to num. So if we want to do this piece of code num times, we can't do it, right, with code like this. So that's why we need loop. With loop, we can do it like this. I will write it first and then I will explain it to you later. We can do it like this. If we run this and then I input 10, we see that we got 10 tests. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We got 10 tests. And then if we run it again, I input 1, we got 1 test. So this is what we want. So what happened in here? First, let's see the inside of parenthesis of 4. So in this case, we can see that it is 3 parts. It consists of 3 parts. The first part is the initialization phase. So this piece of code will run when the loop first started. When the loop first started, it will initialize a variable called I, which equals to 0. This I, we use it to represent the current iteration. And then the second part, this is the condition. So I say that looping is used to repeat a process several times or until a condition is met, right? So this is the condition. If this condition evaluates to false, then the loop will break. The loop will stop. And then the last part, I++. Well, I++ is same as I equals I plus 1. So in this part, this part will run when each iteration ends. So why we need this? If we don't do I++, the I will stay 0, so that this condition will never be met, and then our code will loop it forever. So the process will be like this in I equals 0, and then it will evaluate this condition. It will check I less than num. Because the current I is 0, 0 is less than, let's say that num is equals to 5. So 0 is less than 5. So this is true. Then the loop still run. So if the loop is running, it will run the code inside the curly braces, all the code inside curly braces. So it will print f test. And then this marks the end of iteration 1, right? After this curly braces is run, this is the end of iteration 1. So this piece of code will run I++, which makes I equals 1. So now the repetition will start again from the top with I equals 1. So because 1 is still less than 5, it is still true, and then print test. And then I++, so I equals 2. So this will run 5 times until in this I equals 3, this one I equals 3, and then plus 4, 4, and then 5. In the last part, when it checks I equals 5, 5 is not less than 5, right? So this equals false. So this what makes loop stops, and then the code will not run. After the loop stops, it will run the code after the for. So this is the for loop. Looping in C can be done using for while and do while. This tree is almost the same with some differences, with some slight differences. In this video, we only cover the for one. So that's it for this video. Thank you.
Hello, this time we're gonna make a Redis implementation in our web application as a cache to store our data. So Redis is an open source BSD license in memory data structure store used as a database, cache, or a message broker. It supports data structures such as strings, hashes, lists, sets, sorted sets with range queries, bitmaps, hyperlookups, geospatial indexes with Redis queries and streams. Redis has built-in replication, LUA scripting, LRU eviction transactions and different levels of on this persistence and provides high availability via Redis Sentinel and automatic partitioning with Redis cluster. So Redis is an open source BSD licensed in memory data structure store used as database, cache, and message broker. It supports data structures such as strings, hashes, lists, sets, sorted sets with range queries, bitmaps, hyperlookups, geospatial indexes with Redis queries and streams. Redis has built-in replication, Lua scripting, and LRU eviction transactions and different levels of on-disk persistence, and provides high availability via Redis Sentinel and automatic partitioning with Redis cluster. So basically, Redis is an app used as a database, but we store our data in memory, but not in our disk drive. So it will be very expensive if we load data in Redis. So the use case of Redis cache technology is used in when the scenario is like this. When you want to load data in our app, but the data is too much. So you need to access a database and then you load it and send it back to your application. It will take so much time, so we need use cache as a temporary database for faster access. Now, first we gonna install Redis first. So go to redis.io web. This is the official web of Redis. And then we go to the download. I recommend you to download the Docker version of Redis because if you use this, you don't need to setting any more
in-app setting. When you run it, you can use it. So you just click this download button, and you will get redirected to Docker web to install this Redis. Next, we're gonna download run setting for Redis. We get it from GitHub of programmer zaman now, from Belajar Redis. Now we done download the Belajar Redis master packages from programmer zaman now. Now we open this Redis file and we get this docker compose.yaml file. So we try to open it. Visual Studio. At here, we got this docker setting. If we run this, so when we add this file to Docker application, it will get this setting, and it will automatically add it to our Docker. So we only need to add this Redis setting to our Docker. First, open a command prompt. Add here, add the file. Now we only need use command docker compose -f, and then our file name docker strip compose.yaml, and then we call up to turn it on, and then -d to tell it runs in the background. Use enter, and then the docker will and the Redis will be installed to your Docker application. If you got this error, docker compose is an invalid command, you can install Docker desktop application first. You can just install it from the official website. Just download it from here and install it as usual. And then after we install this, just restart your computer once, so the Docker will be finally installed to your computer, and the command of docker compose can be used. Now our Redis is done add to our Docker. We're gonna check in our Docker application by getting it here. Docker, open the dashboard. From my command prompt, it tells that I already have the Redis in our Docker, so it's only just start it up. In my Docker application, look, the Redis application is running, so now it can be used. So now if we want to interact with the Redis application directly from the command line interface, we can use this command docker container, and then we open the container, and then we execute the -it means interactive, and then the application called Redis, and then we execute the script in bin sh. So it will run a Docker PowerShell in our command prompt. After this, we can open our Redis CLI by command Redis CLI -h, and then we tell what application we are using that has a Redis service. For example, with www.example.com. But I host this Redis application in the local host, so I only call the local host. Now we got the local host 6379. Now we can interact with our Redis just like this, music, and then blah blah blah. Now our Redis is ready to use. So we need to install a Redis client in our backend application. In this tutorial, our backend is using a Golang, so we need an add-on to connect our backend application to the Redis using the Redis client. The application is called Go Redis. Now we need to install our Redis client in our backend. So we use Golang backend. We need to install a Go Redis application in our Golang backend. So this is the Go Redis GitHub. If you want to install this, try to open the documentation and example. So this is the web for Redis. So just follow the tutorial in here. First, we need to install Go Redis in our Golang application. Just copy this command and then run it in our backend.
Now in our backend, we can copy the link that we copied back then we install it here. Now after we finish install the Redis in our backend, first we need to modify our grep resolver. So we go to resolver.go here, and then we give it a Redis client. So redis.client. Okay. Now in our resolver, it can connect to a Redis client. Then in our server.go, we copy this code to connect to Redis database. Just copy it, and then we add the, the code in our server.go. And now, because in our resolver.go there's an attribute of Redis client, now we add the attribute with this. Now we search for our resolver, and then we add RDB is our RDB, and also in here. Now, after we add the RDB in our resolver, now in every resolver function, we can call the RDB attribute. Now our backend is connected to the Redis client, so we can connect it every time we call the resolver. So after we done making a Redis client for our backend, I have a few questions to make you guys have more insight of Redis. The first one is, what is a pub sub Redis feature, and what are the Redis command besides get, set, and del, and the function of it?
Hello everyone, my name is Jessica and my initial is LC30. Today we're gonna learn about Azure. So Azure is an application or software to create prototypes and some specifications for websites and applications that we want to make. So a prototype is just like sample model. So before we make applications, we can make the prototype first, so it's easier for us to design the application. And now we're gonna move to the software Azure RP9. Okay. Yeah. Here we can see the page one. So this page is just like a canvas that we can fill with contents that we want to design in this prototype. So here we can see in the library tab, libraries tab, and which this tab contains the properties that we can use to design our prototype. So yeah, let's just start to put something here. So for example, here in the search field, we want to search for text field. Here we put text field here. Text field is a field that we can put any information. It's just like when we log in, we can input email on the text field, just like that. So in this text field, we want to add placeholder, like placeholder like an information for this field. So here on the right side, on on the interactions tab, we can see the hint text field, and we just write here. For example, we want to use this text field for username. We just write username, right? So it's working. We have the username placeholder there. And if we want to try to look at this prototype, we can press the preview button. Now we can see this. This is the prototype that we made. And yeah, and next, move to the Azure. And we, for example, want to add radio button. So just type radio. Yeah, we can click and drag the radio button. We want to make this to radio button for gender. So the first one, we can double click and edit the text. We can write female, and on the other button we write male. Yeah. So we must set these two radio buttons into one group. So just press the female and then press, click the female and then press Ctrl on your keyboard and then click the male. And then here, in the assign radio group field, we just write gender. So this means when we click on female, when we choose female, we can't choose the male. Yeah, so we can't choose both, just can choose one. Just click preview to see how it works. Now it's already worked. Any question? If that's clear enough, we're gonna move to the Axure again. All right. So we're gonna add button. For example, we're gonna add button like this button. Actually, all of these are the same. These three buttons are same. So we're gonna choose one button here. And now to edit this text, we can double click on it. We can write, for example, register. Yeah. And we can see the preview. It's already there. So yeah. The other way to see the preview, you can just reload the page. It's like that. So it's the same way. We move back to the Axure. Now, for example, we want to add image here on this prototype. So just drag this image here, for example, and to fill this image, just double click on it and choose the picture that you want to put in. So yeah, you can also set for the size. There you go. Any question? If that's already clear, I'm gonna add some drop list, for example. So just search for drop list here and just drag and just add here. All right. So to fill this drop list, we just double click on it, and we want to add some choice, right? We can choose the edit menu, and here, for example, we want to make 3 choice, which is monitor, mouse, keyboard. So we just choose OK, and then OK again. Okay. Now we're gonna back to the Chrome, and we're gonna reload this page. Here, we have the drop list. And any questions? If that's clear enough, that's all for this lesson. Thank you for your attention. See you on the next meeting.
Hello, my name is Johannes Paulus, and my initial is PB. Today I'm going to teach you about inheritance. So, inheritance is the mechanism of placing an object or class upon another object or class that retaining similar implementation. Also defined as deriving new classes from existing ones such as a superclass or base class, and then forming them into a hierarchy of classes. So basically there will be a superclass that we can call parent class, and a derived class that we can call child class. Why we can call a superclass is parent class and derived class is a child class? Example, if I have 2 classes, class A and class B, if class A have 2 attributes and 1 method, and if class B derive from class A, it means class B will have the same attributes and methods from the class A. So, example, if class B already have one attributes, if class B derive from class A, then class B will have 3 attributes and 1 method. So we can call class A is a superclass or parent class, and class B is a derived class or child class. Okay, let's continue to the program. I already have a project named inheritance, and I will create a main class. For the inheritance concept, I will use animal. So I'm going to create a new class, name of class. This class will be a parent class. So we can add 1 attribute, protected string type. Example, the access modifier is protected. Why protected? If you have an attribute that access modifier is protected, it means this attribute will be derived from another class. Okay. Okay, we will create a setter getter for the attributes, and the constructor okay. I will create another class to be a child class for this animal class. Example, I will create snake. In this snake, I will add 1 attribute to this class. Private boolean is poisonous. if you have an attribute that has an private access modifier, it means this attribute only can be accessed from its class. So when you create object from snake class, you can access this attribute from another class. You can access the attribute only in this class. And because of that, I will create a setter getter for these attributes. And I will create a constructor too. Okay. Oh, if snake wants to derive an animal class, this animal class, you can add extends keyword. Then the name of the class, animal. It means this snake class will be a derived class and this animal class will be a superclass. Okay. I will add boolean is poisonous as the parameter and set this is poisonous equals to is poisonous. Okay. I will create another class. Example dog. Dog class will extend animal class too. So this dog class has an attribute type. Why? This class has an attribute type because it extends from animal. This type, this attribute, came from this class. If I delete it, this type is not recognized by the compiler because this class doesn't have this attribute. I will add one attribute to private string name. We will add a parameter name and set the name to the name in doc constructor. This dot name equals name. Okay. If we already create the classes, we can call that classes in our main class. So, example, if I want to create an object from snake classes, I will call snake class, and the name, example, snake equals new snake, and we will choose this parameter, this constructor that has two parameters. Type, example, Python, false. And then we will print the data from the object, snake.getType. And we will create another object from doc classes, doc equals new doc, name, doggy. Sorry, its type is Siberian, husky, name, doggy. If I print doc.getName and doc.getType, If I run this code, it will be printed Python and Doggy and Siberian Husky. So this is the basic of the inheritance when you have a parent class and child class or derived class that inherit from another class or derived from another class. So this class inherit this class. It will has an attribute and method from this class. So this is it, our material for today. Thank you.
Good night, guys, and today I want to uh, teach you about repetitions in C. Well, what is repetitions? Repetitions is just like its name. It's a set of actions that is repeated a set amount of times. Let's say, for example, you want to repeat the action print hello world 10 times. Well, there is two ways to do this. First, well, you could just copy it 10 times. But this is fairly impractical to use because it will make your code fairly longer if you use this kind of repetitions. And then there's the second, that is to use a looping control structures. Well, what is a looping control structures? A looping control structures is an action that you could use in C to repeat the action a set amount of times. There are three types of looping in C. First is while loop, and then there is for loop, and then there is do while loop. Well, for these three type of loops, what are the differences? Well, there are not really a big amount of differences, but there are certainly differences among them. First, for the while loop. Now, as you could see in here, the while loop, first there is an expression right here, while, expression, and then statement. The while loop only, of course, let's say you want to repeat it. Let's say you want to repeat that print. First and foremost, while, and then your expressions, and then simply your statement here. A while loop only executes if the expression in here are correct. Let's say, for example, here, if it's true, the loop will execute the statement and then check again for the expressions. If it's true, it will check again. If it's false, then the loop will simply terminate. Now, and then for the for repetitions. For the syntax, the basic syntax is for. This is initialization, or I could say init. And then after init, there is this expression. And then after that is the so-called update statement. Now, the flow of the for loop, first, it will execute the initial statement. And then it will check the loop condition. If the loop condition is true, then it will execute the statement and then execute the update statement. And then it checks again for the looping conditions until the looping condition says false. When it says false, then the loop will simply terminate. And then there is the do while repetitions, the last one. The do while is just like its name. It will do something and then loop for it. So let's like this, and do statement and then while. Now, the do statement, the do while loop will do the statement once and then check for the expressions. If the expression is true, it will do the statement again. If it's false, then it will simply terminate. There is this while and then do while. What is this difference between these two loops? The difference is simply if the expression is false from the get-go. Let's say, for example, in the while, you have 3 is bigger than 5. Now, we know that this is false, right? 3 is not bigger than 5. 3 is smaller than 5. So the loop will not execute. But if we wait to do and then while, let's say 3 is bigger than 5, it will first do the statement and then check if it's the expression, if it's true or false. If it's false, then it will not do it. If it's true, then it will loop. So that's the differences between a while and a do while loop. A while will check the expression first, while the do while loop will check the expressions later. That is repetitions. This is for the for loop. Let's say for examples, I need I is 0. And then while I is smaller than 10, let's say for examples, I increment it by what? And here I want to use the print f, and then the print, let's say hello world. There. Now if we execute this, yeah, okay, sorry, I forgot this one. Oh wait, this is, if you do it like this, well, I guess that's it for this. I guess this is for the repetitions. Are there any questions that you all want to ask? Well, if there is no questions, then I guess this is it for repetitions in C. Thank you for your attentions and good night.
Hello everyone, let me introduce myself. My name is Alicia, and in this tutorial session we will be learning about how to make a selection in the C programming language. But first you need to open your draft application, and then we need to make a new file first before we can start to write our code. You can make the new file by clicking this file menu, choose new, and then select the source file, or you can just use the shortcut by pressing Ctrl+N in your PC or laptop keyboard. Okay. Then we need to save the file first so that the next time you want to open the file again, you can just open it. So just press any key in your keyboard randomly so that the asterisk symbol here will appear. And this asterisk symbol means that you can save this file because there's changes to the file. You can save it by pressing Ctrl+S in your keyboard and then choose wherever directory you want to save your file at. So it's up to you. Here I will be saving it at drive B, and you can just rename the file whatever you want, so it's up to you too. And here I will give the name as practice.cpp. Okay. If you have already saved the file, you can just remove the key we just pressed randomly. And then first, before we start to code, you need to remember to include the header file that we will be using here. So we will include stdio.h as we usually will be using while we will be using the input or the output. And then we also need to remember that we need to make the main function. So we will be making the integer mean, bracket, and then the curly bracket. And don't forget to write return 0. Okay. Now to point out again what our material, I will be writing it here. So our material is selection using if syntax. Just for your information, this double slash is used to state that this line of code will be commented. So when we run this code, it won't execute this line because we just make it into some description or some command that won't be executed. Okay. So first, what is selection? Selection is used if we want to make some decision. So if you have any condition that you want to fulfill in order to execute something, then we can just use this selection. To make a selection, we can use if, or also we can just use switch case. But in this tutorial, I will only be teaching you how to use the if syntax. So first, you can just type if bracket and then curly bracket. Okay. Inside this bracket, we will be writing the condition that will be fulfilled in order to be the code inside this curly bracket will be executed. So let's just make some case. For example, if we have a value of x, so a variable of x, if we would like the variable of x to be more than 5, and then we will be printing more than 5, like this. So we just need to initialize first the variable of x, integer x equals to 5, like this. And then we can just write this condition inside this if bracket. We can just write it like this. X is more than 5. And then we can just make sure that we have print as what we would like it to be here. So to test our code whether it is true or not, we can just press F11 in the keyboard and see. It didn't print anything because the condition is not true when we give the value of 5 into the x variable. But if we write 6 here, and then we run it again, and here, you can see it prints more than 5. You can read it like this. Is 6 or x is more than 5? If yes or true, then it will execute the code inside the curly bracket. But if we make it like this, 5, we can read it like this. Is 5 more than 5? Well, it is false. That's why it didn't execute the code inside this curly bracket. That's how it works, okay? And then let's add some condition again. Let's say if x equals to 5, then it will print equals to 5, like this. Okay. To add a new condition, we can just type else if like this, and then bracket, and then the curly bracket. Just the same as before, we can just put the second condition inside the bracket. Just the same as the bracket in the if, like this. Okay. Inside the else if, we can just say if x equals to 5, then it will execute the code inside of the curly bracket. Okay, for your information, if you would like to compare if you want to compare two variables, then you can just use double equals. Okay, so it's not just one, but you need to give it two equals. So instead of the curly bracket, we can just say printf equals to 5. So let's just run it again. You see here, it will print equals to 5. And then the last one, let's just add some new condition again. Let's say if x is less than 5, then it will print less than 5. If you want to add more condition, you can just write the same as the second condition like this by using the else if. And inside the bracket, you can just write the condition you want it to be like this. And then inside the curly bracket, we say print less than 5. Okay. If you change the value of x become 4, and then run it by pressing F11 in your keyboard, it will print less than 5. But actually there is more simpler way to make this condition to be fulfilled automatically if both of the condition above it is not fulfilled. You can just make it by removing this if and the condition we have written. And then it will become only else like this. Let's just run it first before I start to explain to you how it works. You can see here that we'll get to the else and execute the print less than 5. So how it works? Well, you can write it like this. Is x is more than 5? Well, it is false. Then it will skip and it won't execute this code. And it will just get to the second condition by checking again. Is 4 equals to 5? Well, it is false. That's why it will skip this condition again. And then it will get automatically to the else, and then it will execute this printf less than 5 like that. But how about if we change the value of x into 5 like this? Let's run it by pressing F11 again. Well, it will still get into the second condition as what we want it to be. And how it works here, like this. Is 5 or the x is more than 5? Well, it is false. That's why it will just get to the second condition now. Is 5 equals to 5? Well, it is true. Then that's why it will execute this printf. And after the code is known to be fulfilled for this condition, it won't check for the last condition anymore. So it just stop until here. Okay, and that's why, as you can see just now, it will only print equals to 5. And to check again whether this condition will still work, we can just change it into 6, for example. And here you can see it will print more than 5 because when it checked for the first condition and after it is have known that the x is more than 5, and as you can see the condition is fulfilled, then it will print and skip the other condition below it. Well, is there any question about this condition of how the logic works, or is there any code that you still have not understand? Well, if there's none of it, that's all about the tutorial session for now. Well, thank you very much for your attention.
Hello, welcome to the class. Today we are going to learn about Introduction to Database System with the code of ISYS 6123. So for this section today, we are going to learn about the data definition. As you can see, the course outline is here. The first is to create and drop database. The next is to create and drop table, create and drop index, altering table, and view introduction. So let's start with the basic one, create and drop database. So how do you create a database? You just simply type create and you say you want to create a database. Then you say create database and you give the database a name. What is the name you want to give the database is? It depends on you what you want the name is. So like it depends on you what do you want the name of the database is. This is how you create a database. For example, if I want to create a database, I would just type create database and I name my database like my data maybe like this. It basically depends on your needs and what you want to name the database is. Then the next, drop database. Maybe some of you are wondering what drop is. So drop stands for delete in SQL Server. Stands for delete. Then if you want to drop the database, you could just simply type drop database. You say the name my data. So in this case, you're dropping the database called my data. That's all about the first section, create and drop database in SQL Server. So the next, create and drop table. How do you create a table? It's pretty simple to you. Say you want to create something. Then there's something. What do you want to create? You want to create a table and you give the table name. But in this case, when you're creating a table, you need to fill them with the attribute. So we'll just use this parenthesis. Then you simplify the what are the attribute is this way. So for example, if I want to create a table called MS customer, maybe create table called MS customer like this. I would simplify what attribute do I want. For example, like I want ID in form of numeric form, then as a primary key, then I want it to be auto incrementing on its own. So I just use these identity words. Then the next, I want the customer to have their name. So I would just say name. Then I simplify the type of name is varchar 255, which means like a string, a character with a maximum of 255. Then I want to simplify that it's not null, so we cannot stay in blank for this name, so it must not be null. So maybe I create a table like this. Then how to drop them? It's pretty simple keyword too. You just use drop. And what kind of thing you want to drop? You say you want to drop a table. Then you simplify what kind of table you want to drop. So which table you want to drop. Basically you say this table is a table that you want to drop. This way. So that's about create and drop a table. Next is about create and drop an index. So basically some of you are wondering what index is. Index is used like an index in the books. So like it helps in searching. Like it is storing the data based on some place, based on the name itself, and it helps a lot for searching. So it's basically speeding up the searching method. So that's how our index use. And how to create them, you basically just type you want to create an index and what are the index name and which attribute from which table do you want to create the index on. So maybe you would just simplify on table name and you simplify which attribute you want to create the index on. This way. So it helps faster in searching. But on the contrary, it will also slow down the process of inserting and updating data. So how to drop them? You could just simply say drop index and the index name this way. For example of the create index, you could just use, for example, if I create an index for my MS customer table, especially on the attribute name, I could just simply type create index. I want to say index name. Oh, this may be the same. Name index like this. And I say on table name MS customer. Then I simply say I want to create it on the attribute name this way. So that's all about creating an update and dropping an index. We are done. The next we are moving to the alter table. So it's basically like you added a new table. You edit the table you have created before with the things that you want to edit for. Like for example, in this MS customer table, oh, I forgot to put an email. So I will just edit this table and add a new attribute. And we'll just do it in here. So first we'll say we want to alter a table and we want to alter an MS customer table. And in this case, I want to add a new column called email with a type of varchar 255. This. So I basically added this MS customer table and have an add email with a type of varchar 255 and then. So now the MS customer will have an attribute of ID, name, and email. That's for the MS that's for the altering table. Then the next we'll move on to view introduction. View. It is like a set of queries. So when you execute a view, when you execute like select bintang, then from a view name, this way, when you execute this, it's basically executing the queries on the view. So how to create this view? You can just use create view, and you simplify the view name, then as. So what are the set of queries that you want to execute for? You can just use select. If you use this star, it means that you select all the attributes and from MS customer like this. So when you basically run this part, you would run this whole query. So like you can say that view can be like a table too, but it just rather than a table, it's just executing this query and maybe return it in form of data, so it looks like a table, as you can see here. And it's helpful in limiting the access of user. And I think that's all about view. It's done too. So for the course outline, we are done. That's all about the materials. I hope you enjoy them and I hope you can learn a new thing. Thank you.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Avi Leonardo. Today I'm going to teach you about C++ programming. Okay, the first thing we are going to cover is the software. The software that you must use, you could use, is Dev C++. There is a lot of other software that you could use, for example, like Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio 2017, but that doesn't really matter at all. You can use any C++ software as long as comfortable at using that software. So the topic that we are going to learn today is input and output. How to create the input, give input to the software in Dev C++, and giving an output to the console. Okay, so this is the Dev C++ application. The first thing that we are going to do is create a line called include stdio.h. What is this line mean? We're going to include a library named stdio. Stdio stands for standard input and output. We're going to use this in every C++ program. Okay. Next, we're going to create an integer main. Integer main, just create it like that. We're going to return 0. Why must we return 0? Because 0 means no error or no warning, like that. Okay, so we are going to create a simple output hello world using the command called printf. Okay, just create a printf like that, and we're going to give a double quotes, and we're just going to write the string hello world, just like that. Okay, don't forget to put a semicolon at the end of the line. This is all if we are going to create a hello world application. If we're going to run it, we just need to press F11, or we can go here at the icon, this compile and run icon, just click it, and then we're going to see this hello world string that is displayed in the console. Okay, next. The printf works in any way. You can create a printf again at the bottom, for example, Linus University, and we are going to run it again using F11 or the compile and run icon. up to you. So we're going to see hello world. We're going to see hello world and Binus University next to each other. So how can we create the Binus University string in the new line? So we must give a /n. /n means new line. So this /n can give a new line, like enter if you're in Notepad or Word. And if we are going to run it again, we're going to see that Binus University is under the hello world string. Okay, if we're going to create an input, we're going to need a variable, a container for what we're going to input it to the program. So we're going to just make an integer, a number a, the name of the integer, the name of the container, and then we're going to use scanf. Scanf, we're going to give a double quotes and then give %d, d means integer, and then we're going to give ampersand and then a. This means we're going to input something that we're going to give to the container A or the integer A. So if we're going to run it, now the program is not finished because it is still waiting for the user to input something. If we're going to input number like 16, and then the program is done. Okay, 16 now is in the A variable. So we can print this A. Just going to use printf again and double quotes, and then we're going to use %d and then comma, and then we're going to put a. This means we're going to print the number a. If we're going to give a letter string in front of it, we could just write it, your number is a. This means this %d will get replaced by a. So if we're going to run it again, waiting for an input, if I write 16, then your number is 16. Okay, this is the simple basic of input and output in C. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Juan Josanova Jong, and I will be your lab assistant for today. You can call me by the name Juan, and today we're going to learn about normalization in database. So first things first, what is a database? A database is a collection of data that are stored in a structured manner inside your computers. Now, the next thing you need to know is what is normalization. And normalization is the process by which we refine such data so that it can be stored in a much more efficient manner with less redundancy and more data integrity. Alright, so we're going to use this order form as an example for today's lesson. Normally, the best practice is to normalize a data until its third finalized form. But today we're going to learn only up until the first normalized form. So first thing you want to do is you need to extract all the attributes from this form. So you might want to open up a notepad to take note. So what I'm going to write is first UNF. It is short for unnormalized form. So data that haven't been undergone any sort of normalization is called a normalized form. Right, so I'm just going to write all the attributes down. The attributes here are this: order number, customer number, customer name, customer address, city, country, date, and if you see here, the product number, description, quantity, and unit price is redundant when there can only be one order number in one form. There can be multiple product number, description, and so on and so forth. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to put it inside a parenthesis to signify that it is in fact redundant data. So I'm just going to write it down, unit price, and we're all set. This is all the attributes in an unnormalized form, and I'm going to name this order. So this represents a table which is called order, and inside are all the attributes of said table. So in order to turn it into the first normalized form, what we have to do is that we must separate the redundant data with the non-redundant. So I'm just going to copy paste this, and I'm going to name it order header, and this one I'm going to copy and paste it here, and I'm going to name it order detail. Right, so now we have ourselves the first normalized form of this order form. Do keep in mind that we must also omit the data that can be extrapolated and that can be taken from the available data. Let's say, for example, there is a total price here. Let's say, for example, total price should be redundant if it exists. Now, in the first normalized form, if there is a total price, it will be gone. Why? Because we can get total price from quantity and unit price. We just multiply them. That's why we don't need total price. So if you encounter such data in the future, please do remove them in the first normalized form, as it is not efficient. Why store it if you can calculate it? Right. So that's how we get the first normalized form. But why do we divide it? So for quick visualization here, let's say there is two tables. All right. So first, when it's unnormalized, there's like I'm just going to copy and paste this one. In the database, the unnormalized form will look somewhat like this, right? There will be, let's say, we give some examples, dummy data. Let's say that there's a customer that bought a shampoo, but then they also bought, let's say, an eraser. Now, if you see it here, right, this is inefficient. You just write on and on and on. Let's say there's another customer, he buys yet another shampoo, and he buys yet another eraser. See, this is inefficient. This can be made much more better. In its first normalized form, it will look like this. Here, here, and 1, 2, shampoo and eraser. Just going to get that all out. There, it will look more like this. Now, This is actually a bit incomplete because, well, in order to determine, let's say, the date of the transaction, one must know which transaction it is. So we use order number as the marker. And we use description, we use product number for the marker, right? But what about quantity? You cannot just use product number as the marker for quantity because, well, there is a lot of transaction going on, you know. Like you can buy 2 pencil in the first transaction and 3 pencil in the next transaction. So in order to determine the quantity, you must know which transaction and what product it is. So here in order detail, we must put an order number also. Now, are there any questions? Oh yeah, I would also like to remind you that if you encounter any difficulties in the middle, you can always interrupt me, ask me a question, raise your hand. Okay, if there are no questions, the material is done for today, and I'm going to ask you a question in return. So in order to review the materials, what are the things you must watch when you change an unnormalized form into a first normalized form? Yes, that is correct. The redundant data and data that can be inferred from available attributes. That is all. Thank you all for coming. I will see you in the next session.
Hello, today we will learn about selection. In algorithm implementation, there will be some code that executed or not based with certain condition. And now we'll be write our main function. And then we will write the include standard io.h because the program will be contain input and output algorithm in here. Maybe we can print some UI first input number example will be at the variable in here integer number and scan the number and percent number. Don't forget to print the number so we know the number has been inputted in our variable. In here I will be save as selection.cpp. Let us input our number example 3. The program will be in output 3, will be print 3 like that. So we know the number has been stored into variable number in here. And let us learn about selection syntax. The first one is if statement. The syntax like this. In here will be input our statement. Example, we can use our variable if number is smaller than 10. So if the number is smaller than 10, example 3, 4, 5 or something like that, the program will be execute program inside this line like that. So let us printf %d is smaller than 10. And don't forget to insert the number and then let us run our program. Example 3 is smaller than 10 like that. But if we input the number that equal or greater than 10, example 10, the program will be not run anything because the program has not fulfilled this condition. And then if we want the program run something if not fulfill this condition, we can use the else. So in here let us print is bigger is equal or bigger than 10, like this number. Let us run this code. Example, we input 13. 13 is equal or bigger than 10. So if the condition at this if is not fulfilled, the program will be run the else statement. How if we want to add some logic before else? So in here I will give some if again. If number is less than 20, let us print. I copy from the above statement, is smaller than 20, and in the else I'll be printf the number is equal or bigger than 20. Let us input example 13. 13 is smaller than 20, can be like that. But if we do it like this, in here if we input the number example 3, the number that's smaller than 10, the program will be executed both of them. How if we if we add the numbers that less than 10, the program only execute this line only. No need we print the number is smaller than 20. We can add the else in here, else if the number is less than 20. So the program will be run the first true condition. So in here if we input the number that smaller or less than 10, example 9, 9 is smaller than 10, but the program at line 11 will not be executed because this condition value is true, like that. And let us learn about the second syntax of selection. This is the if statement. The second one is switch case. And the if statement I'll be comment it. So let us learn about the switch case. Switch case. Switch case. We can write it like this. Break. So in here we will be input our condition, but the condition based on our number. So let us switch our number. If the number equals 1, what will the program do? Maybe I will be print number is equal to 1, like this. We can add some case again. Example case 2. In here I will be print number is equal to 2, like this. And the default is similar like the else. So if the number is not 1 nor 2, the program will be run the default. The default maybe we can print number is Sandy number, and don't forget to break it. In here don't forget to add the break, because if we input the number of 1, the value of case 1 is true. The program will be execute number is equal to 1. If we not add the break, the program will be execute the next line too. So don't forget to add break at the end of every case. So let us input the number example 1, number is equal to 1. If we input 2, the number is equal to 2. But if we input example number beside both of them, example 10, number is 10, like that. That's the switch case statement. If I comment the break, if I input number of 1, number is equal to 1, equal to 2, and number is 1. So all of them will be executed because there's no break. So don't forget to add the break. The last one is ternary operator. So in here, the switch case I will be commented and I will be uncomment the if statement. So the ternary operator will be write like this. Inside the bracket is the condition. Like example, I'll be give the condition if number modulo by 2 equals 0. If the number is even, the program will be run the middle line if the condition is true. So let us print and number is even. I will remove this backslash n and the program will be run the right one if our condition is false. So in here I will be print and number is odd. And let us run this program. If we input the number example 3 is smaller than 10 and the number is odd. If you don't like the ternary operator, you can write it with if statement too. So in here I will be write it in if else statement. If the number modulo by 2 equals 0, will like this. So if we input example 4 is smaller than 10 and number is even. So in order to understand this material more, you can search about what is the specific difference between if, switch case, and the ternary operator. And this is all of our material in here. Thank you.
Hello Binusian, my name is Lukas Chandra Kurniawan, LT21. In this session, we will learn about selection and repetition. For selection, there are if-else statement and switch statement. For repetition, there are for, while, and do-while statement. Let's start. I already make the file for C programming. First, I will make a simple output and input. Then we will try to make a decision with selection based on the input. Okay, I already made it. And now let's make the selection. First, we try to use if-else statement. Just type if and then open brackets, and here we will make a condition. So here I will try if the input is 5, then if input equal 5, then I will output you input number 5. Then if the input is 6, I use else if input equal 6. Then I will output you input number 6. Then we can use else statement for the other condition. Else printf you are not input number 5 or 6. So for this selection, if the input is 5, then the code in here will run. And then if the input is 6, then the code in here will run. And after that, if the input is not 6 or 5, then the code in here will run. So we just will try it. Here I will input 5, then the program will output you input number 5. If I input number 6, then the program will output you input number 6. And then if I don't input number 5 or 6, example I input 10, and the program will output you are not input number 5 or 6. This is for the if-else statement. In the selection, we can use a relational operators. So the relational operators, there are equal, less than, greater than, less than or equal, greater than or equal, and not equal. Okay, this for the relational operators. After that, we can use a logical operators. There are and, or, and not. So these operators, relational operators and logical operators, will return a Boolean, true or false. And for these logical operators, I will explain it more detail. Here are the explanation. For the and, if true and true, that will return true. If true and false, that will return false. If false and false, that will return false. So if there is one or more false, it will return false. And for or, true, it will return true. True or false, it will return true. And false or false, it will return false. So for or, if there is one or more true, it will return true. After that, for not, true it will return false, and false it will return true. It's like the Boolean statement will be reversed. So if we want to try it, we can use if, and we will use the operator in here. So I will make a condition if the input greater than 5, or input less than 2, I will output true. Just try it. So here, if I input 1, it will output true in here. Why? Because if the if statement will check the input greater than 5, is it true? It is false. But input less than 2, it is true. So false or true, it will return true. And the code in here will run. Next, for the switch statement, just type switch and then open brackets. And here we input the variable or the content we will check. So I will check the variable input and then open curly brackets. Here we use case and then the statement, and then here we use break. I will output printf input is 5. So in the switch statement, it will check the variable input, is it 5 or not. Is it 5, then the code in here will run. So in the switch case statement, you have to be more specific because it cannot use operator like not equals or greater than or less than. It's just equal. That's all for the selection. Next, we will learn about repetition. First, we will use for. The syntax is for, open brackets, and then the variable we will use as the index. We can declare it. I will declare e equal 0 and then semicolon, and then the condition when the code will run or loop again, e less than 10, and then semicolon, and we will increment or decrement the variable. I will increment the variable, and here is the code that will run in the repetition. I will output a star, so it will run 10 times. We can try it. Here I will input whatever number. Then here it will be looping a star for 10 times. Here is for the for step. After that we can use while statement. Just type while. After that open brackets. Here is the condition. I will use a variable. Let's just say edx less than 10. After that open curly brackets. And then the variable we have to declare it first. So I will declare in edx equal 0. After that, in here Don't forget for increment or decrement. So I will increment the variable. Why we have to increment or decrement the variable? It's because we don't want to looping forever. If you looping forever and then your computer will be crash. Your code will be crash. So here I will output a star2. Then here I will comment it because we want to see the while statement, just the while statement. So here I will try it and there will be output a star looping 10 times. For the while statement, it's done. After that, do while statement, just type do. After that, open curly brackets. And after this, just type while and the condition. Don't forget to give a semicolon. Here is the condition. Here I will comment the while and we will use the edx variable, edx less than 5. Here I will increment the edx. Then here I will output a star. Here we will try. I will input number 5 and a star will be looping for 5 times. The dual statement is like the while statement. But the difference between dual and while is the while statement will check the condition first, then if true, the code will run. But the dual statement will run the code first, then it will check the condition. So even the condition return false, dual statement will run the code one time, but the while statement will not run the code. That's all for this session. Thank you and see you next time.
In this video, we are going to talk about main things to write a C program, which are variables and data type. So what is variable and what is data type? Generally, variable is a place where we store data, and data type is the type of data that we store to a variable. So we'll discuss data type at first. There are lots of data type in C, such as integer, character, float, double, boolean, and etc. Integer in C are written as int. Integer is used to define numeric variables holding whole number, such as 1, 2, 3, and so on. The next one is character, written as char. Character is data type that holds one character, such as a, 3, and other symbols such as hash and semicolon, and etc. Notice that characters here are marked by a single quotation mark. And the last one is float. Float is a shortened term for floating point. Float is data type that are used to define numeric value with floating decimal points, such as 1.2, 0.5, and etc. And the next one is variable. Before we can use variable, we must declare our variable first. Declaration means we are announcing the properties of variable to the compiler. These properties include variable data type and name of the variable. For example, int age. In this way, we made the variable name age to be able to store integer data. That's about declaration. What if we assign some value to a variable at the time of declaration itself? Then the process called initialization. For example, integer age equals to 10. In this way, we are initialize the value, or we are assign the value of age variable into 10. Noted that initialize variable with a value doesn't mean that we cannot change the value of a variable afterward in our code. If you want the value to be changed somewhere, you can. Let's see how we can change the value of the variable after initialization. Let's jump to our IDE. Here I'm writing hash include stdio.h. It's our header file because we have to output something later. Then I'm declaring main function int main. Then inside this main function, I am first declaring a variable named age, and I initialize it first to 10. Then I change the value to 20. As we can see, after we declare the variable, we can use the variable by using only its name, without its data type. In this case, I change the value of the variable name age that I made before to 20. After that, printf %d, age. In this way, we can output the value inside each variable. And the last thing is return 0. Let's save, build and run this code. You can see that the output here is 20. Previously I have initialized each variable to 10. Then I changed it to 20 and print it. And as expected, the output equals to 20 without errors. We can also assign variable to a variable instead of constant output like 10 and 20. Let me show you how to do it. First, I will initialize var1 as 15, and then I will initialize also var2 as 30. Then I want to assign the value of var1 to var2, so I will write var2 equals to var1. I'm assigning whatever value of var1 to var2. In this way, var1 and var2 will have the same value, which is 15. Let's print it to see whether it works or not. Printf %d, var2. Let's run it. And as expected, the output turns out to be 15. And the last one is we can declaring variables in a line with the same data type. In this way, all of these variables have the integer data type. Instead of just declaring in different line, it's better to declaring them in a single line. Also, we can assign their value in the same line as well. And then I print var1, and then I will print var1 to var3. Let's build and run. And as expected, 3 of them have the same value, which is 10. Before we end this session, in order to be more understand about this material, I would like you guys to research more about constant, difference between constant and variable, and data type besides integer, character, float, double, and boolean. This is the end of our session. Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Christina Yuanita. Today, I will explain you about the selection statement in Java. In Java, these are used to control the flow of the program. These are the types of selection statement in Java. The first one is if statement. The second one is if else statement. And the last one is switch statement. But in this lessons, we only discuss about if statement and if else statement. So we not discuss the switch statement. We're going to the first selection statement in Java, that is if statement. In Java, if is a conditional statement. It will provide execution of one of two statements or blocks depending on the condition. The syntax in Java for if statement is if, the condition, and inside this if block, we write the statements. If the condition is true, then the statements inside the if block will be executed. The execution will be continued to the next statement after the execution of the statement in the if block. If the condition is false, then the statement inside the if block will not be executed, and the execution will start from the statements that are next to the if block. So we're going to the examples. In these examples, we have two variables. There are number 1 and number 2. In step number 1, we assign the value is 0 and the number 2 is also 0. After that, we have the object of scanner and we name it scan. In these examples, we want to check whether number 1 is greater than number C or not. But before we do that selection statement, we will receive input from the user for the value of number 1 and the value of number 2. So we write number 1 equals scan.nextIn, and we do the same thing for the number 2. We will receive input from the user for the value of number 2. So we write number 2 equals scan.nextIn. After receiving the input from the user, we check whether number 1 is greater than C or not. So we write the condition if number 1 greater than number 2. This is the condition. And if this condition is true, we will execute statement inside this if block. We will print number 1 is greater than number 2. So if we run the program, at first, program will ask user to input the value of number 1. And we give 5 as the value of number 1. And the program will ask user to input the value of number 2. We give 3 as the value of number 2. Then the program will print number 1 is greater than number 2. So the program is execute this statement because this condition is true. Number 5 is greater than 3. But if we give 3 as the value of number 1 and we give 5 as the value of number 2, then the program will not print. The program will not execute this statement because this if condition is written false, because 3 is not greater than 5. That's for if statement. Next, we are going to if-else statement. If-else statement is similar with if statement. The syntax is if, the condition, and inside this if block, we write the first statement. And outside the if block, we write else, and inside the else block, we write second statement. So, if the condition is true, then the statement inside the if block will be executed. And if the condition is false, then statement inside the else block will be executed. And based on syntax we write here, we know that if the condition is true, then the first statement will be executed. And if the condition is false, then the second statement will be executed. So we are going to the examples. In these examples, we want to check which is the largest number between number 1 and number 2. So we receive input from user for number 1 value and number 2 value. Next, we write the condition. We check if number 1 is greater than number 2, then the statement will print number 1 is largest. Else, we will print number 2 is largest. So if we run the program, first we give 5 as the number 1 value, and we'll give 3 as the number 2 value. Then the program will print number 1 is largest, because this if statement return true. If this statement return true, then this statement is executed. But if we give 3 as number 1 value and 5 as number 2 value, then the program will print number 2 is largest, or statement in else block. That's for if-else statement. Until here, are there any questions? If there are no questions, we're done here, and I hope these lessons can be useful for you. Thank you for your attention.
Hello, my name is Eliora, and now I will give you a short introduction of what is computer networks. According to Wikipedia, as you can see in front of you, computer network is a group of computers that use a set of common communication protocols over digital interconnections for the purpose of sharing resources located on or provided by the network nodes. The interconnections between nodes are formed from a broad spectrum of telecommunication network technologies based on physically wired, optical, and wireless radio frequency methods that may be arranged in a variety of network topologies. One of the most common practices of computer networks is the Internet. As all of you know, we are connected by the Internet. We can access YouTube and Google freely even though their home base are far away from Indonesia. As long as you have internet connection, it is okay. But if you have wondered how exactly internet works, that is the same as you wondering how computer networks works. The other common example of the computer networks are business internal network itself. And now let's go to the process. Imagine you are accessing youtube.com. In simple computer terms, you are requesting for the youtube.com server to give a response for a request by representing your computer, the youtube.com website. What your computer does is generating a network packet that is packaged from your computer and sends it to youtube.com server. There are several background processes done when compressing that network packet. First of all, is the process of stating the source identity. In this case, the source is your computer, and the destination in this case is the youtube.com server. There are various elements that represent your computer or the owner of youtube.com's identity, such as IP address and MAC address. Next, your computer will continue to the process of stating the content of what your computer asked for in the packet. In this case, your computer asks for a request to present the youtube.com website. So in the network packet, it will consist of the request. And next, it will also continue to the process of making a connection to the destination, establishing a route for the network packet to transport to the destination. The final process is translating or formatting the packet to make it understandable to machines, as the packet will be transferred from machine to another machine. And machines have their own language, which is different to our language. Now, we assume that the network packet has arrived in the youtube.com server safely and unharmed. youtube.com server will start doing the said processes or the discussed processes earlier in the reverse way. As you can see in this image on the bottom right corner of your monitor, once it has been translated, it will arrive and in the number 1 phase, and then it will go to the destination phase 1. And by doing that, the util.com server have to do the processes in reverse way by translating the network packet from machine language again until the network packet is presented in the util.com server, and the owner server will automatically prepare your computer's request to access util.com. After the util.com server completed your request, the server will repeat the exact same steps from this one your computer have done until the network packet, which is the response, arrives at your computer and your computer presents util.com, which is here, the last step. These repeated processes, all of these processes, reverse to OZ layer, as you can see above here, also known to many people as TCP or IP layer. There is a bit history of why OZ layer is known to many people in different ways, but they are essentially the same. OZ layer is the international standard made by ISO to generalize a lot of standards of this kind of processes in the past. So network technologies brands in the world may not have any difficulties to interacting and doing their function. As you can see here, in the bottom left corner of your monitor or with a smartphone, we have a little table of OC model and TCP IP model. TCP IP model is essentially the more generalized version of OC model, but in computer networks, we commonly use OC model. These processes, which including softwares, as you can see here, it is indicated by application layer, and network protocols involved are not complete without the support of good and appropriate network hardwares. There are several network hardwares which are known to us. Computer and smartphones are examples of end-user or host device, which means the devices that directly interacts with users. And it may be one of the devices you are holding right now. Routers, switches, servers, modems, and network cable are other examples which play important part in more complex network topology. As you can see here, we have an example of server, network cables, and this is UTP cable, which stands for untwisted pair cables. And this is switch, and this is router or routers in plural now. Now, maybe you are familiar with routers, and you maybe have one in your home, which transmits Wi-Fi to your phone and to your laptop. As for server, it is a supercomputer that gives you services such as file sharing, emails, and giving you websites to see. And Venus also has a lot of servers in store, so it can help with office and other utilities for the college students. And that is the end of my introduction to computer networks. Thank you and see you next time.
Good night, everyone. Today we will learn HTML. So what is HTML? HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and HTML is the standard markup language for the web page, and HTML describes the structure of a web page. With HTML, you can create your own website. First, we open a text editor to create HTML. Here I use a text editor from Visual Studio Code. Okay, loading, and we can press Ctrl+N to create a new file. And after that we can save this file first, and I will and that file name maybe index.html. After that we type an exclamation mark and see that autocomplete and press enter. Okay, I will explain about HTML element. So what is an HTML element? HTML consists of a series of elements. This is elements, and that are HTML elements. An HTML element tell the browser how to display the content, and HTML elements can be nested. This means that elements can contain other elements, like this. This head element can contain meta element or meta element and title element. And all HTML document must start with a document type declaration. This doc type element. The doc type element declaration defines that this document is an HTML5 document. HTML documents consist of nested HTML element. Okay. The HTML element is the root element of an HTML page. The HTML document itself begins with HTML and ends with /HTML. The head element is a container for metadata. This is metadata. And metadata is not displayed. Metadata typically define the document title, character set, style scripts, and the head element contains meta information about the HTML page. The body element is the visible part of the HTML document. Okay, content in a body element can display in your browser. And if you want to create text in HTML, you can use the p tag to create paragraph in your HTML. You can type p and press enter. And HTML elements are not case sensitive. Lowercase p same as uppercase p. Okay, this is no problem. And maybe I will type hello world and we can save. And you can see this HTML. First you must to go to your file and double click this HTML file, and your browser open, and this hello world, this is the content of pit tag, and your head element are not displayed. And this title I will change maybe my website, and the title can change this title at the tab bar. You can refresh first, and this change to my website. Okay, and if you want to create a title for your website, you can use h1 tag. I will type this is my website and save this, and you can refresh your page, and the title of your web page is this is my website. Okay, this is h1 tag and this is p tag. And
HTML headings are defined with this element to H6 element. Headings are important. Search engines use the headings to index the structure and content of your web page. Users often skim a page by its heading. It's important to use headings to show the document structure. H1 headings should be used for the main headings, followed by H2 headings, then the less important, and so on. This heading can tell H6 element that and these H6 element are less than important than H1 element, okay? And HTML contains several elements for defining text with a special meaning. Maybe you want to create a bold text, you can use B tag, that means bold, and I will type maybe my name is friendly, and you can save that and you can refresh your website. And bold tag return this content, okay? P check just not bold text, and bold tag return the bold text in your web page. And if you want to create a solid, you can use it.
Hello everyone, today we will learn how to make bouncing square animation using HTML5 canvas. First of all, we need a text editor and a browser. You can use any text editor, but currently I'm using Chrome and Visual Studio Code. Now we need to create a HTML file. I call it index.html, and then we use the HTML5 snippet. After that, we insert canvas tag, and then we set the width 800 pixel. After that, height 600 pixel, and then we set the background color to aqua, and then we set the ID is canvas. After that, we will work on the JavaScript side. We use the script tag, and then inside here we will input our program logic. Now we need to get the canvas DOM by using canvas is equal to document.getElementById using the previous ID we input here canvas, and then we input here canvas too. After that, we will get the canvas context canvas.getContext. Here we will use the 2D context. After creating these two variables, we will make three functions. We can use either a row function or normal function, but I prefer using an array function. So once the first function is draw, and then the second function is render, The third function is update. After that, first of all, we will fill the draw function. In the draw function, we will use fill right from the context function. Fill right. In here, the first parameter is the canvas x coordinate, and then the second one is canvas y coordinate. The third is the rectangle width, and then the last is the rectangle height. For example, we draw on 2020 coordinate. After that, the width and the height, because we want to make square, so the width and the height is the same. For example, we use 50 pixel for the width and the height. Also, because we want to make the square move, so we must make the square x and square y is dynamic, not static like this. So we make a new variable to store the x and y. X is 20, then var y is 22, and then we change here to x and y. After that, we also want to perform a cleaner code, so we store the size into a variable too. Size equal to 50, and then we change it here. Size. After that, we done on the draw function. Move on to the render function. First of all, we need to clear the canvas using clear function from context. So context dot clear rect. Because we want to clear all the canvas before redrawing again, we clear it from point coordinate 0, 0, and then till the end of the canvas size. So we put here canvas dot width, and then canvas dot height. After clearing the canvas, we call the draw function. After that, we move on to the update function. First, we call the render function. After that, we want to make the point coordinate x and y from the rectangle to move. So now we create a new variable. New variable for the x and y velocity. So x velocity and y velocity. For example, we move x every one refresh rate. So we move 2 pixel every refresh rate. Then we move the y 5 pixel every refresh rate. So here we call x, we increment with the x velocity and y with the y velocity. After that, we validate if the x and y is still inside the canvas range. So if x is between, less than 0, or x is x plus size more than the canvas dot width, we will multiply the velocity to a negative number. So it will make the square still inside the canvas. Velocity multiply with -1. It's also apply with the y point if y less than 0 or y plus size more than canvas dot height. Then we multiply the y velocity with -1. After that, we just need to use request animation frame function to call this update function every our monitor refresh rate. If our monitor refresh rate is 60 Hz, then it will use 60 FPS. And if our monitor is 120 FPS refresh rate Hertz, so it will have 120 frame rate per second. After that, we just call this update function. And then don't forget to save. After that, open our browser and voila. Is there any question? If you have any question, you can contact me at this email. Stephen@gmail.com. Thank you.